get extended by 15-20 minutes. So just bear with it because we have to cover all the 4 GS. Okay. So let us start with the session now. Is it okay? Should we start? Okay. So let us now start. So like in the previous class, let us keep our doubts which are related to this particular session. Afterwards, maybe after some time, maybe on some another platform, we can have other type of doubts, but let us now keep our doubts relevant to this particular session. Okay, so let us start. So first of all, before I start with individual GS, I would just like to repeat a few points which I've already stated a lot of times, which I've already stated in the YouTube videos as well. So always, whenever you start your preparation, like I've been saying, your aim should be to be mains ready before prelims, and that can only happen when you cover maximum syllabus of general studies. So that is why it is very important to start GS preparation right now. आपकी preparation हमेशा GS point of view से होती है, mains point of view से होती है. So that is why it is very important. I've already stated this point many times. Second point, always keep the syllabus and previous year questions before you. So I've already said this 1,000 times. I'm going to repeat it one more time. Whenever, please remember, whenever you are preparing your general studies, these two things, syllabus and previous year questions, should always be in front of you. Okay, so you already know that syllabus is available in detail on the UPSC website. Regarding the previous year questions, you can visit Mrunal's website, mrunal.org. So on mrunal.org, what he has done is he has arranged the questions GS1, GS2, 3, 4 topic wise. So you can get the previous year questions topic wise on this particular site. So please note it down, bookmark it, take out printouts. I do not care, do anything, but whenever you are studying, these two things will always be in front of you, be it in a digital format, be it on paper. It has to be there. Okay. Third of all, you have to make short notes on each and every part that is mentioned in the syllabus. Please, I've already stated this. I'm going to state it again. None can replace your own handwritten notes. So please do not rely on the notes of toppers or on anybody else. Please remember your own notes cannot be substituted by anything else. So please make short notes, right? And finally, start answer writing practice right now. Do not wait to clear your prelims examination. Please remember that. Okay. So I've already given 3 videos on YouTube that have covered these 3 things. So I have given my resource list. I have given how to make notes, and I have also given a video on answer writing. So please, you can go to this link, and these are all available on the YouTube channel of Unacademy. Okay. So just on the YouTube channel of Unacademy, you can get access to these videos. They are available for all, and please see them because these are essential part of your GS preparation. Okay, so that is why it is very important that you see these 3 videos as well. So I'll not be repeating the points that I have already stated in these 3 videos, because the whole purpose of making separate videos was that these deserved separate videos on their own. So that is why just refer to them. Okay, take your time, refer to them. There is no hurry. Okay, so let us now immediately start. So we'll be coming to GS1 first. Okay, so as we know that GS1, it includes the following topics. It includes your history. So when we talk about history, we have Indian history, we have world history. Okay, so in Indian history, we know that we have the freedom struggle, and we have post-independence India. Okay, so we have these two types of history in Indian history, and then we have the world history. Okay, and then you have art and culture. So we are talking about GS1, we are talking about mains. So in mains, you can see we have art and culture that is there in the syllabus. So then we have geography. So geography is of two types: physical geography, human geography. And finally, we have Indian society. So all of these four, if you look at the syllabus, we can broadly divide GS1 syllabus into these 4 topics. So we will be touching on each and every topic. Okay, so let us start. Let us start with history first. So, first of all, when we talk about history, all the three types of history, the content is mostly static. As we all know, history is mostly static, it has already happened, right? The questions which are asked are, however, mostly analytical in nature. Okay, so when I use the word analytical, it basically means a question where someone is asking you a logical reason behind an event or behind whatever the question is he's trying to ask. So he wants a proper logical reasoning. So these are not direct questions. For example, they will not ask you a direct question like, say, the reasons behind 1857 revolt. They won't ask you that. They'll ask you, for example, the impact of 1857 revolt on the British policies. So that is a reason which requires certain type of thinking. But we do not need to be afraid of this word analytical. Okay, sometimes we tend to get afraid of this word because it looks like a very hi-fi word, analytical. But it is not so. If you have read your book properly, if you have understood the events that happened, then it is very simple. Okay, so don't be afraid of this word analytical, because all the content is there in your resources. So I have already mentioned resource list. You might be having your own. So every content comes from your resources. You just need to put it in proper words. You need to know how to put it. So, okay, let us move ahead. So in history, it is very important that you always think from three dimensions. Very, very important. Political, social, and economic. So this is very important, because what happens at times is that we fail to understand the issue from these three dimensions. So whatever you are reading, be it the freedom struggle, be it the post-independence India, world history, try to think from these three dimensions. It is very essential, because if you can see each and every decision, for example, the British took, had these three types of impacts. You will agree with me. Each and every decision, for example, the Indian National Congress took, had these three types of impacts. Each and every movement that happened, be it the non-cooperation movement, be it the Quit India movement, each and every movement has these three types of impacts. So you must be able to analyze from these three. So then you will automatically be able to answer each and every question in a very holistic manner. So you must do that. We'll take an example to just see how to do this. Okay. And in history, it is very, very important that you remember the timeline and years. Very important. Why? Because as we all know, history is nothing but events that took place in a chronology. That is the basic meaning of history, right? So it is very important that you remember these both aspects, timelines and years. So you must be able to recall the events that happened in the proper chronological manner. So that is why history demands revision. So, for example, when you study for your prelims, you continuously revise the topic, the events that took place. So, similarly, even from a mains perspective, you have to do so, because whenever you are writing your answers, they have to show that timeline of events that happened. And I'm telling you, if in history you are able to remember the timeline, then it becomes very easy to remember the points and able to reproduce them in the test. Okay. Also, it is very important that you remember the leaders, organizations, the viceroy, the committees and the reforms. So these are basically your keywords. These are your keywords. Every GS paper, my friends, has certain type of keywords that you must try to incorporate in your answer, in your notes, because these are the words that the examiner looks for while checking. आपका आंसर अगर सपोज से आपके आंसर में ये चार पांच चीजें ना हो, तब किसी को लगेगा कि हाँ भाई ये GS1 हिस्ट्री का आंसर है। तब किसी को लगेगा कि ये बच्चा जो है मेंस का एग्जाम दे रहा है। इट विल लुक एज इफ यू आर अ वेरी लेमैन पर्सन who had superficial knowledge, who suppose say had a knowledge equivalent to any ordinary citizen. So it should look like you are a student of GS. And so these have to be included in your answers. So whenever you make notes, try to include these. Whenever you write answers, try to include these. I'll give you an example. Okay. And finally, you must be aware of the historical events and figures in news. So this is very, very important. For example, we were celebrating the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, right? So this year in 2018, there was a question on the thoughts of Gandhi ji. So similarly, even in 2017, there was a question which was based on this historic event, which were in news. For example, I think 2 years back there was a question regarding the differences in personality between Subhash Chandra Bose and Mahatma Gandhi. So that was because Subhash Chandra Bose was recently in news. His files had been declassified. So similarly, all the historical events and figures related to modern history which are in news, you must do them. So right, someone is pointing out that Champaran was there. For example, Jallianwala Bagh massacre anniversary was there, 100th year. So you have to have an idea of these events and you have to prepare them from a mains perspective as well. And always think from these 3 points and always think from these keywords. Okay, so let us take an example now. So we will be taking two examples. Okay, so first, for example, let us see this question. Discuss the reasons behind the British emerging as the most formidable power in India by the end of 18th century. Okay, so it is basically asking how the British were able to overcome other European powers as well as the Indian kingdoms that were existing at that time, be it the Mughals, be it any other kingdom. So if you look at this, so for example, I had just told you to think from the three dimensions. Okay, so let us think from the three dimensions in this particular question. Question number one. So when we talk about, suppose say, the political dimension of this question, so the political dimension, if you think, you can see that British, what they were able to do was they used diplomacy. They used strategic diplomacy, right? And they used policies. So you can name some policies like the subsidiary alliance, like the policy of ring fence. So all of these content is given in your resources, right? All of these are given. So if you think from a political dimension, you will be able to think from these two perspectives. Okay, right? So they were able to use diplomacy and policies to weaken the Indian kingdoms that were already there, to get them to fight amongst themselves, right? Now, if you think from an economic angle, so for example, you might know that industrial revolution had happened in British, right? Industrial revolution had happened in British, and that is why it was one of the key reasons that they had a very strong naval and military organization. And this was very, very important in the way they were able to defeat the other European superpowers and also threaten the Mughals. Because, for example, Mughal kings were afraid of their naval supremacy. Similarly, the Portuguese, they were also afraid of their naval supremacy. And finally, if you think from a social perspective, we all know that unlike other European powers, Britishers, they were not interested in religious zeal at that time, religious conversions and all, right? And they also tried to acclimatize to the Indian customs at that particular time because we are talking about the end of 18th century. Please remember, okay, we are talking when the Britishers had just come and now were expanding their power. Okay, so because for example, other superpowers like Portuguese, they were very much interested in religious conversion, and that is why they had to face a lot of resistance from the Indians, from the Indian kings. But Britishers did not do that, and that is why they stayed away from this. So just by analyzing from the three dimensions, you are able to put proper points in a proper structure. Okay, so this is very, very important, right? Let us come to the second question. Second question is about partition that was a culmination of communal politics that started developing in the opening decades of the 20th century. Okay, so now this particular question, question number two. So if you can just see, it is simply asking you to reproduce the timeline. It is a very simple question that just requires you to reproduce the timeline. So I was just telling you that you must focus on timeline in years. So if you just remember the timeline, it is very easy to answer this question. So for example, what you need to start is obviously a background. So you just tell us about what had happened till 20th century. Okay. So we know that the 20th century communal angle had not come into play. It was not at the forefront. But when we start with 20th century, obviously we start with the 1905 Bengal partition. So that was the time when all these communal politics it starts. Okay, and then you have to just reproduce from the timeline. So then you will say tell about the 1906 formation of the All India Muslim League, and then you will talk about 1909 Morley Minto reforms. Okay, Morley Minto reforms, because this is the start of communal electorate, communal reservation, as somebody is pointing out, right? Then We can talk about the Lucknow Pact, 1969 Lucknow Pact, because Lucknow Pact had what happened because of this, that the AIML, All India Muslim League, it gained legitimacy. The Congress recognized it. Again, then you will go to the 1920s, and then you will go to the 1930s when the elections took place and the All India Muslim League, it suffered a heavy defeat. And that is the time when this seed of partition was sown, when they were very now sure that they had to go separate with India. And then finally, when you end, you will end with the 1940 Pakistan resolution that happened. So as we can see, it is nothing but simply reproduction of the timeline. So as I am saying, if you are able to remember the timeline of events, then you will be able to write the answer. If you are able to think from these three dimensions, you will be able to write the answer. Freedom struggle, my friends, is one of the most scoring sections in GS1, and it is very interesting as well. I hope you find history interesting, the freedom struggle of India interesting. And if through proper revision, through short notes, you are just able to remember and learn to analyze these things, I'm sure you will get very good marks. And just remember, we must include these keywords. So you must include these keywords. You must remember the name of viceroys. You must write the name of committees of reforms. Okay. So these are very, very important. So that is the way you go with history. Okay. And for post independence India and world history, so these two topics, these are certain topics where students they tend to be confused कि करना चाहिए नहीं करना चाहिए. Okay, देखिए दोस्तों, I always say that please never ignore any section which is there in the syllabus. Please never ignore it, but give time which is in proportion to that topic. तो ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि कल को आप लोग जो हैं, you have devoted 1 month to complete both of these topics. That is not good. Because if you analyze the previous year papers, like I've said, previous year papers हमेशा सामने रहेंगे. So if you see, hardly one question is coming. Hardly one question is coming from these two topics. Okay, so that is why I'm not saying do not study them. Please do, but focus on the main topics. So ये आप कर लीजिए. For example, I've written down the topics for your reference. So in post-independence India, we have consolidation, basically how our states were formed, the linguistic angle that was there to the state formation, and how, for example, the role played by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel in the consolidation and all, right? And then wars. So obviously the Indo-China war, the Indo-Pakistan war, the Bangladesh war. So you have to do them properly. Emergency is another very important topic you must do, and green revolution. So I feel these four topics are very important. You always do the complete chapter properly, complete topic properly, but these four topics, these are very important topics. Okay, similarly, when we talk about world history, all the revolutions that are there, American Revolution is there, French Revolution is there. So these revolutions are important. Then you have the topic of colonialism. Okay, so colonialism is very, very important. Okay, so someone is pointing me economic reforms of 1991. So you can cover that here, or you can cover that in economics. For example, in my case, it is mentioned in GS3. So you can do it in either GS1 or GS3. Okay. And someone also asked me about the book sources. So as I said already, I've given a video on my resource list, which is there on YouTube. So please see that. Okay, so let me just come back again here. So colonialism is very important because they have been asking certain questions on colonialism. And then you have the world wars, which are again very important, especially World War II. So in World War also we include United Nations, League of Nations and all. So all these are a part of World War. And finally you have Cold War. Okay, so these are the important topics in my humble opinion, and obviously you cover the entire syllabus, entire subject, but you have to focus on these because these topics, if you see, they have been the crux of what UPSC has been asking. And this is very, very important point. This is very important point. Try to link all the three histories. So this is very important, and this will actually make history very interesting. So for example, you must be able to understand the impact of global revolutions on Indian freedom fighters. So what was the impact of American Revolution on Indian fighters? What was the impact of the Russian Revolution on Indian fighters? Okay, so when I say three histories, I basically mean our freedom struggle, our post-independence India, and world history. So these are the three histories. Okay, and we must be able to link them, because that is very, very important. So you must be able to link the impact of global revolutions on Indian freedom fighters, suppose say, on how, suppose say, in post-independence India, in how, suppose say, Indian government was playing a role in world affairs. So as we all know, during the Cold War, India gave the non was at the forefront of the non-alignment movement. So you must be able to link, and when you are able to link, this becomes very interesting. And certain topics of post-independence India, they are linked with society. Okay, so society is also a part of your GS1. So certain topics, for example, state formation is a very favorite topic of UPSC. This year also they asked one or two questions on that. Regionalism. Okay, so these topics are there that are part of, that are linked with society. So you must be able to think from these dimensions. And finally, you must know how to use maps wherever possible. So maps are very easy to use in history as well. Maps ऐसा नहीं है कि only for geography. They are for history as well. सो इट इज़ वेरी सिंपल. सपोज से आपको इमरजेंसी है, सो इमरजेंसी पे कोई क्वेश्चन आ रखा है, सो यू जस्ट हैव टू शो द इम्पैक्ट ऑफ इमरजेंसी. तो आपने जो है फटाफट मैप बनाया इंडिया का, एंड यू जस्ट हाईलाइट द रीजन की, देखिए नॉर्थ इंडिया में मेनली इम्पैक्ट रहा था. सिमिलरली आपका बॉर्डर रिलेटेड कोई भी ऐसे आपसे इंडो चाइना वॉर पूछ रहे हैं, सो आप उसमें जो है यू कैन शो थ्रू मैप दैट इंडो चाइना वॉर ये था पार्ट ऑफ इंडिया, नॉर्थ ईस्ट इंडिया एंड द जम्मू कश्मीर रीजन दैट वाज एट द forefront of this particular war. So simple use of maps which makes your answer more presentable. Okay friends, so this is about history, and I'm pretty sure if you just think from these perspectives and study from these perspectives, you'll be able to enjoy history and able to do very well in it. So it is a scoring section. Okay. So, okay, someone is asking me maps are to be drawn with pen or pencil. I used to draw with pen only. Listen, be practical, because you have to write an exam in 3 hours, and I'm telling you, it is very difficult. It is one of the biggest challenges in UPSC to complete the paper on time. So I don't know if you have very good speed, then maybe you can use a pencil or not, but generally you do not have the time. Okay, so you just try to write a few answers in time limit and then see, but I'll recommend you to do everything with pen. Everything with pen. Okay. So now let us come to art and culture. So this is another very important section, and something which kind of scares people. Okay, but I understand it used to scare me as well. But let us try to be smart as to how to study this. Okay. So the content. And okay, just before moving on, a few questions are related to general answer writing, so you can ask me in the end. Okay, so I have an eye on these questions. I'll answer all of them in the end. Okay, so let us talk about art and culture. So, for example, the content again, it is mostly static. Simple सी बात है, art and culture is mostly static, but again, questions that are being asked are analytical in nature. So what I'll recommend you is to study theme wise. So when we say theme wise, this is basically a very smart way to study. So you pick up an entire theme and then you study that in chronology. For example, if you are studying architecture, okay, so start with ancient architecture, then move on to the temple architecture which was there, then move on to, suppose say, the Mughal architecture, and finally finally the colonial architecture. So आपको कुछ नहीं करना, आपने सपोज से आर्किटेक्चर उठाया, यू पिक अप योर सोर्स, यू स्टडी दैट पर्टिकुलर थीम फर्स्ट. ओके, सो नितिन सिंघानिया हो या फिर कुछ भी हो, सो फॉर एग्जांपल आई हैव ऑलरेडी गिवन माय रिसोर्स लिस्ट, तो आप वहां देख सकते हैं. सो यू जस्ट स्टडी थीम वाइज. सो सपोज से आपने आर्किटेक्चर खत्म किया, देन यू मूव टू पेंटिंग्स, देन यू मूव टू स्कल्पचर्स, एंड देन ऐसे करके ये जो थीम्स हैं विच आई हैव रिटन डाउन. So there are around 7 themes which I have written. These are important in my opinion when it comes to art and culture. So one must be well versed in these themes, because अगर आप questions देखें इन्हीं से आते हैं. टेम्पल आर्किटेक्चर पे क्वेश्चन आ गया, सपोज से भक्ति मूवमेंट पे क्वेश्चन आ जाता है. So that is why I'm telling you to emphasize on these 7 themes. Okay. So music में you can add dance as well, music and dance. Okay. So these 7, 8 themes, these are very important. And always think from these dimensions. Again, Again, very important. First of all, okay, natural बात है, you are studying art and culture, you will always think from an artistic dimension. You have to appreciate the art, है ना? So for example, कोई painting है, so you have to appreciate the emotions of the figure, you have to appreciate the flow of the hand movements and all when we talk about dance, है ना? So artistic तो होगा ही, but what happens many a times is that students they tend to just think art and culture from a art perspective. वो नहीं होना चाहिए, because every art and culture, everything that was created, that had a certain political element, that had a social element, that had an economic element to it. Okay, because आप कुछ भी देखिए, every art that was produced, that was done under the patronage of certain rulers, okay, who supported it, right? That was done under that, these arts and all, they also reflect the society. आपका संगम, संगम लिटरेचर है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल संगम लिटरेचर ब्यूटिफुली रिफ्लेक्ट्स व्हाट द साउथ इंडियन सोसाइटी वाज एट दैट टाइम. आपकी जो पेंटिंग्स हैं, जो थीम्स होती हैं, दे रिफ्लेक्ट व्हाट द सोसाइटी वाज एट दैट टाइम. और सोसाइटी में भी स्पेशली you have religious angle, so religious angle is also very important. Okay, and finally you have economic angle as well. So these are very very important. So whenever you are studying an art, just think from these perspectives. तब आपको जो है you will be able to write holistic answers, and ऐसे ही answers को marks मिलते हैं यूपीएससी में. Okay, so ये सब बहुत जरूरी है. You have to analyze, you have to study from these perspectives. Okay, and one more thing, please try to draw diagrams of art figures. And you have to draw basic diagrams only. देखिए, I was very bad in drawing. Okay, so आप मुझसे बुरे नहीं हो सकते. Trust me, you can not be bad than me. So इसलिए अगर मैं बना सकता हूँ, तो आप भी बना सकते हैं. And बहुत ही basic diagrams. For example, let us talk about the Buddhist stupa. है ना? So बुद्धिस्ट स्तूपा के लिए बेसिक एक डायग्राम बना दीजिए कि यार ये आपका जो है, सपोज से अगर आपका ये ऐसा करके, ये आपने जो है उसका वो बना दिया, और ये जो है एक बुद्धिस्ट स्तूपा हो गया. बहुत ही सिंपल सा डायग्राम है, आप बस उसको लेबल कर दीजिए कि भाई ये जो है छतरी है ना, ये जो है उनका डोम है. इनके भी टेक्निकल टर्म्स होते थे, आई डोंट रिमेम्बर, यू कैन इजीली रिमेम्बर, है ना? सो जो है सिंपल सी एक ड्राइंग बनाई, एंड दिस विल गेट यू +1 मार्क. ट्रस्ट मी, दिस विल गेट यू +1 मार्क. Okay, so someone is pointing out that I was in design, but I had a background in software design, in research basically, user experience, so not at all related to art and all. So I was very bad in art. So you just have to have a very basic understanding, and आपको basic diagram बनाना है that just able to, when I see this, okay, I can say this is a stupa, and you have to properly label it. For example, prehistoric cave art. सो केव आर्ट तो वैसे ही बहुत ही वैसी डायग्राम्स बनाते थे, तो आप उनसे तो बुरा नहीं बना सकते, है ना? तो आपको क्या करना है, सपोज से बस एक ऐसा ऐसा एक स्टिक फिगर सी बना दी, उसके हाथ में एक डंडी, एक सपोज से कुछ गाय टाइप बना दिया आपने यहाँ पे. ठीक है, ये हो गया आपका एग्जाम्पल, हो गया प्री हिस्टोरिक केव आर्ट का. So this is very important. This is very simple to do, and these add extra value to your answers. So whenever you are making notes, no, so include these in your notes. ऐसा नहीं है कि ये डायग्राम आपसे बुक में देखकर इग्नोर मार दे. प्लीज डू नॉट डू दैट, है ना? यू कैन सिंपली कन्वर्ट द डायग्राम्स दैट आर गिवन इन योर बुक इनटू वेरी बेसिक सिंपल लाइन डायग्राम्स लाइक दिस, है ना? बेसिक शेप्स तो आप भी बना सकते हैं. सो दैट इज मोर देन इनफ. आपका आराम से इट विल इंक्रीज योर answer value. And trust me, all the toppers do this. I am not the first person that is saying this. This has been said by many toppers. So it is very, very effective as well. Okay? And you must be aware of the historical events, figures, and policies in news again. So यहाँ पर भी होना पड़ता है. For example, this year in 2018, there was a question on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay, so we had recently celebrated the 500th anniversary of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who coming to Vrindavan. So he had visited Vrindavan around 500 years back, and recently Government of India celebrated that particular event by issuing a coin in his name. So that is why this year this question came in 2018, which was about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's impact on the Bhakti movement. Okay. Similarly, you should also be aware of the policies. This is one aspect which we tend to ignore. So Indian government has been taking a lot of steps to promote and preserve culture. So again, this year there was a very direct question in 2018 about the steps taken by the government. So you have to kind of have an idea. So ये आपके current affairs का है, right? So I'm just telling you to always remember these. So whenever you make notes, whenever you study, आपके दिमाग में होना चाहिए कि यार I have to also have an eye on the policies that the Indian government has taken to preserve culture, all the steps that they have taken. Okay, so let us move ahead. Now let us come to physical geography. Okay, so history and art and culture